Ta-da, my friends. What is happening out there? Yours truly, Rockin' Dave, the real deal. North Fort Myers, South Florida. Let's see if we could readjust this on the stand here. Da-da, 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 da-da. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Sorry a little bit late here. Just wanted to bring out one part of the tower on the Bose L1 Compact. I had the other part up, and it was like way up there, so. And I need to see something right here. No, we're good there. Yeah, I need to put new strings on this, which is fine because it's due. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Just messing around a little bit with some of the beats from the Korg sample too that we got about a month ago. Programming certain things in there just for the beats and that, and then just kind of doing a little experiment with some of the older popular classic rock songs here. So, welcome to Monday Night Live. We are not at Jungle Bird tonight because, let's try to get this chair out here, because the weather happens to be a little bit too cold, my friends. And, which that's, it's to be expected. When the weather is too cold, what happens is Jeremy, the owner, he lets people know. He says, hey, we're going to have to cancel for tonight because no one's going to be outside, because it is an outdoor gig. And they don't have any room inside for any of us musicians. So they keep it on the outside. They actually, where we're playing at that little stage, they actually built that specifically for us, which was really kind of them to do that. But I totally understand. It's like 50 degrees out right now. And although some people would sit there and say, well, it's not that cold, we could tough it up. It's still not good for the instruments. And you know what? When people spend money on food, they don't want it to sit out there and it gets cold real quick. They want to be able to, enjoy themselves, not feel like they gotta be up north. A lot of them are vacationing down here, snowbirds. Last thing they want to do is be up north again, especially in this weather. So I get it. We're from up north too, so we totally understand. So again, we should be able to resume next Monday, same time, if weather permitting, and see how that goes. So I did mention in the post I put up pertaining to the gigs down here and the update and everything, what's going on and all of that. Well, here's part of what happens after the Christmas holidays is that people had already spent their money, right? Buying stuff for their loved ones and friends and family and all that. And then afterwards, sometimes they got to go back for the return, to return the presents or something they didn't like, whatever, So there's all of that. But point is, money got spent. So a lot of times what they'll do is like, okay, we'll hold off on going out for a little bit until at least after January. Then they make their New Year's resolution, which is always a big one. I promise I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to this, that, and the other, and, that lasts 2 weeks and they fall off the wagon, and guess what? Right back to the good old days, right? But, so they still, it's still watching their money, And then usually what happens toward the end of January and February, it kind of starts to pick up again. And then there's that factor. There's also a factor that people do go back up north to visit their family. And they'll stay a little bit and everything. So let's see who we got in the chat, my friends. John Dawson, what is happening, brother? Thank you so much for tuning in. You're totally awesome, brother. We really appreciate you. And let's see who else. I'm trying to read everything here. Coachfield, I'm trying to see the chat. God, I wish they would have had it like they used to have it on YouTube. It's just, I wish they would go back to doing is after I shut down the live stream, when I'm done, leave all the comments from the live stream up. So, because then this way I could get on people's YouTube channels and subscribe and check you guys out and all of that. And I really wish they would do that again. So since they don't, or maybe they do and I just don't know a way of getting onto that could be. What would be a good idea for all our new subscribers and old subscribers alike is at the end of the live stream, if you want to leave a comment, that's fine, because at least that'll stay. And then your YouTube channel will be on the comments, if they still do that. Hopefully they do, hopefully they do. So, but yeah, that's getting back to part of the live gigs. That's one of the things that people seem to forget about after Christmas holidays. People make their resolutions. Money got spent. One of the big ones, besides exercising more, is watching the spending. It is up there, because people want to get themselves back on a financial track, and which is totally understandable. But there is other things that do happen, and
we got somebody from Ireland on.
Yep.
Ireland.
Yeah.
And then somebody asked if that's a Gibson.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you from Ireland, my friends. I hope you're well. I don't know what your time zone is there. Here in Southwest Florida, well, it happens to be about 7:15 Eastern time, and but we really appreciate you guys tuning in, because that's just so great. And if you want, leave a comment so I can follow your channel, and because again, they don't leave the live stream, the chat up on the live stream like they used to. They for some reason they took that down, whatever reasons, I don't know. So, and then Deb said that someone did ask about what kind of guitar this is. Is it a Les Paul? It happens to be a Paul Reed Smith McCarty 594. It is the SC model, which I think is great, absolutely great. We do have a Gibson Les Paul Sunburst. Actually, it's like what you call the teal or T-burst, and it's what they call the rim burst. So it's really around the rim, and it's got a flame finish, which is a great guitar. And that guitar This has the pull pots for like coil tapping. So does the Gibson, but the Gibson also has on the pull pots on the Gibson for the coil split is on the volume knobs. On the neck pickup tone knob, you pull it up and it will go out of phase. So really cool feature there. The tone knob on the bridge pickup does a pull pot, but it doesn't do any coil splitting. What it does, it deactivates all the electronics and sends the signal directly to the output. So you get just a direct output. I don't know how that works, but there's a circuit board in that guitar. It's not soldered. It's what you call spade fittings, and there is a circuit board in there. But the guitar is a great guitar, man. I mean, but okay. So to deal with the McCarty 594 series, I guess the 594 is the actual scale length. But I did not notice Ted McCarty worked with Paul Reed Smith on the design of this guitar. But at the same time, I didn't notice Ted McCarty used to be the CEO of Gibson back in the heyday, and I guess him and Les Paul himself teamed up to develop the Les Paul guitar. So when Paul Reed Smith, I think he approached Ted and they kind of collaborated, and Ted McCarty says, "Well, yeah, I could do a design slightly different, but the same concept." And voila, here's the guitar. And this is a great guitar, brand new with the gig bag. It was like $600. It was on a clearance sale. I seen it hanging there. And the funny thing is, we were gonna go to the Gibson factory and get another custom Les Paul made. Standard with this type of a finish, but certain elements change, almost like the custom. So it'll be a combination of the custom and the standard, where the neck heel would be smooth. It would have a belly cut, and the binding would only be on the top, not on the back. But when we started adding up everything, we were looking around anywhere between $7,000 and $10,000. And I'm like, wow, okay. But we were going to go ahead and go through that. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, man, this is a great sonic clearance. It's brand new. And Deb and I went to the restaurant after we left. I think we bought some strings or something. And went to one of the restaurants, and I was telling Deb, I says, I wouldn't mind scrapping the idea of going to the Gibson factory and grabbing this because it's on sale, and there's nothing wrong with it. Maybe it's the model they discontinued or the color they discontinued. And she said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." So we went back to Guitar Center, played the guitar. They actually had two of these. This is the one that had the more tone, because I did everything, all my songs on this guitar that I would normally play, and it did the sustain. And of course, the flame finish is more pronounced on this guitar than on the other one they had hanging up. And yeah, so Deb actually said, "Yeah, no, take your time playing it, because make sure this is what you want. Because if we do this idea, then we're not going to go and spend, the money where we're on the custom Gibson." And I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, let's go ahead and do this, because with my luck, down here, the hottest day of the summer, the AC will go out, and then we got to come up with about $7,000 to replace that, because that AC unit is what's known as a packaged unit. It's not a split system. It's a package system. Anyone that has ever worked in the HVAC industry, you know what I'm talking about. So we grabbed this, and yeah, the guitar's been great, man. What I do like what Paul Reed Smith guitars are known for is their tuning stability. And if you do anything, if you do any kind of music, it's important. If you're doing pop songs, if you're playing chords up here where you got to have the tuning absolutely stable, you need that. And especially if you're doing anything jazz related, because it'll sound real bad. So, but yeah, it's a great guitar. I love the finish on the back, the natural finish. The Gibson is a more darker finish, but it's still a natural finish on the Gibson. It's not what they call the dark mahogany, like the red finish. It's more of a natural finish, which I actually do like, the natural finish. And actually, back in 1983, I bought a Gibson Flying V that was this finish. It had the top body binding, and it was two pickups, no pick guard, and it was almost like it was definitely this finish with a little bit of a burl or curly maple top, a little not very pronounced, but still slightly. And I traded that guitar. I wish I didn't trade it because a friend of mine told me it had the word second stamped in the back of the headstock. And I thought, oh, he said, well, it's not really good guitar. It was like just scrap wood. And I believed him. I'm like, oh, crap, now I wish I kept it because I cannot find that guitar. I could find the Sunburst ones on YouTube, but that particular model, that was the blonde finish, I can't find it anywhere. So if you don't have to get rid of any gear, try not to. If you have to, totally understand. You know, important things in life come up. Got to take care of the family and everything first. So let's see, guys. Yeah, this is so hard to see, guys. Oh, what time is it? Oh, AM in Ireland. Oh my God. Ooh. Yeah, we were in Ireland. We were in. This is 20 years ago. It'll be October. It'll be 20 years ago. We were in Ireland. We flew into Dublin. We were in Killarney. We did like a little jam gig over at a place called Buckley's, I think it was, in Killarney, Ireland. And then from there we went to Waterford, which is where my great grandmother's from. And I didn't get a chance to go out on the street that she lived in. She lived in Hennessy Street. But we did go to the Waterford Crystal Factory and did the tour, and then went upstairs and bought some souvenirs. And what an experience, man. It was so beautiful over there. Oh my God. Oh, we were there a few days. Oh, I think a week maybe it was. And then the year after that, we were in Belgium. I did a gig I call it the NATO gig because we were on the NATO base, but it is the USAG, U.S. military base. That's in NATO. And it was at a place called the 3-Star Lounge. We did the gig there. And oh man, and it was specifically, we went over there for that gig. And that was, wow, what an honor that was. But interesting enough, speaking about 20 years ago, in October, was we put our first YouTube video up on my other channel, which is just known as Dave Byron. And that was 20 years ago. And the very first gig we put up was a short video of me playing the Star Spangled Banner at a guitar clinic, with the BC Rich Warlock, which I do have sitting right here. Let's see if I can get that off the stand. Let's see, I gotta definitely put strings on this guy. Yeah. Okay. Look at that. See, I got the fan going on. It's a low ceiling. Look at that, man. The rolling pickup on there. And this is a neck through. We got this guitar in 2000. Wow, this is a great guitar, man. Oh, this thing smokes. And it has clean pickups. Some people say, "Oh yeah, maybe I would swap out the pickups." I mean, a lot of companies that are not known for making pickups, they'll just put stock pickups on. But sometimes you get lucky. Again, depending on what the style is that you're playing, you might want to keep this clean pickups. And another thing to think about, if you're playing super loud, if you got dirty pickups, meaning high output distorted pickups, sometimes they'll over distort. And then when you're doing volume and roll down to get a clean sound, it's hard to get. And especially if you're running through some of the digital modelers, it's a little bit tough there. Although this little GT1, I gotta admit, does sound good. I mean, and it's a workhorse. So, but yeah. So what I was to say about some of the gigs, one of the places that we're still waiting to reopen is up in Punta Gorda, which is the next town north of us. And I know they were supposed to open up for Halloween this last year, and they're in the process of being bought, and they're like on a hiatus. So, and they're still temporarily closed. So, we're waiting on that. And one of my YouTube or my Instagram friends and guitar buddy, Ray, he said right now that Educators Music is still open, but the cafe is temporarily closed. and they might look for another location. So, Durso's Delight Cafe, which is, man, I think the coolest concept I've ever seen. You have the music store in one spot, and then, like, say this is the front part of the store, and then you have the wall with the guitars and the and then there's a doorway, two French doors to open up, and you go through there, and now you're in the cafe. And he had all the paintings and performances, and they do the Tuesday night open mic, and then recently they were doing stage plays and that. But yeah, something, I don't know what happened, and maybe he's finding a better deal somewhere else to do that. It's which I hope it continues. But my point of me bringing all this up is that I saw a YouTube video with Dave Simpson, and he was mentioning about, I guess, this year to 2026, they're going to not do so many gigs. They're going to now start to focus on writing for another CD. And he even mentioned over in England, because he's over there in England, I think Louth, England, and he was mentioning about the live scene is like kind of dwindling a little bit, so it's not that many gigs like there was. And that's kind of the same thing, kind of going around, kind of everywhere. I don't want to say it's gonna entirely go away. Some people try to make a prediction. Yeah, it's not like it used to be back in the 80s. I mean, people were going out and we were always gigging, man. So, but it's just a complete different time. And I think even though social media, well, YouTube is about 20 years old now, it's not exactly brand new, right? But now you have all these other platforms like, Rumble and Instagram and, TikTok and all that. What makes it different is that now people have an option to stay home, and with the large, flat screen TVs you could get at Walmart for like $500. You get like a 85-inch TV, $500 or $600, and if you have a Bose or you have something equivalent, some JBL, you hook up the sound, you can watch concerts on TV and stay home. Now, people might think, okay, yeah, that's the new thing, sensation, it's happening, it's kind of, there's more options of entertainment to stay at home than there were before, and plus with the DUI laws, people do not want to get a DUI on their driver's license, so, and I understand that. However, it doesn't mean the doom and gloom for the live scene. It might take a little bit of a backseat for a little while. I don't know how long. It might take a little bit. But what I've noticed is that since Deb and I also have our driving gig, when we were doing, not just over the summer, but before the Christmas holidays, we did a couple of charters, field trip charters for the charter school down here in Cape Coral. And a couple of them was at Broadway Palms Theater, and then I did one at a new theater, fairly new theater, in Cape Coral called Bell Theater. For people who are in the Cape Coral area, it's right on Santa Barbara Boulevard, just south. If you're going east on Veterans Parkway, it's just south of that, right around the corner. A small theater, but a theater nonetheless. We saw Oasis High School doing a play there, and the elementary kids went to check it out. I was blown away about the performance and the professionalism of the high school kids. I was like, wow, man. And some of them used to ride with me on one of my routes, and some of the girls, and I think one of the guys did, and it was just top notch. And the kids, they were so excited. It was like, whoa, this is great. And of course, they had that same reaction when we took them to Broadway Palms like a week later. Broadway Palms is a much bigger theater, but they had that same response, like, ooh, they're in this. So you got to understand one thing. The future, there's going to be these kids growing up, and when these kids growing up, if they're exposed to actually going to a live performance, whether it's a play, these two are musical plays. what I could see what could happen is that you get these kids to be exposed to what it's like to actually be at a place to see a live performance rather than just staying home and watching on YouTube with their parents. It's a great idea with the YouTube. Okay. And the reason why I say this is that this generation could see what our generation actually experienced with all the live concerts, and how this is relatable to music and guitar is, and keep the interest in kids wanting to play guitar, is when they see the excitement. They're like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. And hoping that they'll be so excited that when they start to learn how to play, they'll, their fingers, they'll get past the point of getting the calluses on their fingers. My advice, really, if you're going to play acoustic guitar and you're just starting out, get a nylon string guitar because it won't hurt the fingers. Or get an electric guitar. You could like 8 strings and practice that way. And then if you want to play acoustic steel string, then get an acoustic steel string. Because for some, as soon as they start playing on an acoustic steel string, it just hurts the fingers, and then instantly they like, oh, this is too hard, So something to think about for the parents. If you're gonna if your kids want to be interested in playing, think of those two options: a nylon string guitar, acoustic classical guitar, or an electric guitar. And I'll tell you what, in most cases, electric guitars are cheaper than some of these acoustic guitars. And you could put light strings on, and you could buy an amplifier with the headphone jack, so you don't have to hear the amp real loud, and or the student getting the guitar could actually practice without the guitar being plugged in, and then you could start to really develop your that's what I used to do. I started on an acoustic guitar when I didn't even own a guitar, and we used to, both me and my sister, and then at grade school we would take the guitar home on Thursday night and we'd have it all the way till Monday, and then we'd do all the practice on it during the weekend. But my first guitar that I got was an electric guitar, and what's nice with that, since it's not loud at nighttime, man, I was able to practice at nighttime. Everyone's sleeping, I'm over here practicing. I wasn't bothering anybody, But you see, I was enthused with it. I was like, wow, this is great. So I'm going to make kind of a prediction. I'm not going to say this is, going to happen. I'm saying it could happen, judging from what I've been seeing. In combination with kids seeing this stuff on YouTube, right? The concerts, and wow, look at the crowd, and the crowd is cheering the artists on, and everyone's having a good time. In conjunction, when they go on these field trips and they go to these musicals and these plays, and they actually see live performance, and they're actually there, it gives them that extra incentive to like, hey, I think this is cool. I want to try this. And that could be what brings back live performance a little bit stronger than before. And here's something to consider. I see this a lot of times on Craigslist, musicians available, musicians looking for. There was this band, or a guy trying to put a band together. I think he lives in Naples. And I thought he had a good ad. He just say looking for musicians. He didn't say what he played or what he did. But his ad read something similar, something to the fact that they're looking for musicians to do mostly originals with some selected covers, and the idea is the rehearsals will be dress rehearsals, meaning you got to be proficient on your instrument, and then you communicate what kind of songs, what cover songs you want to do, just to get together first to see if things gel, and I'm thinking he's on this page, get together, do a couple of cover songs, see how that works, and then all right, let's have a jam session and let's see what we come up with. This is what we used to do way back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, late 70s, early 80s. We would just get together and have a cassette player, boombox, and record the jam session. And I would always seek out a drummer because that's the time keep right there, and do rhythms, and then later on I would work on melody ideas, and then ideas for what a bass player could do if it wasn't a full band. and that sparked that. It got that ball rolling. We don't have to do that now because everything is much different. But my point is that when these kids start to get enthused and playing, when they're just excited, then they're going to start to play. And then they might stick with it, and then next thing you know, it'll start to create a scene. You know, the cover scene, I don't think will ever go away, that's cool because it keeps the songs alive. But I think it's getting very, very burnt out, extremely burnt out. And that's what, not this one guy that said on Craigslist, but a few people have said they're getting tired of the same old songs being played over and over and over and over and over again. You know, and it's every band, they get together and they're all doing the same songs. There's no difference. So we're starting to see maybe a shift. Although I think I put it on our Instagram page when we were done playing at Miramar Outlets last month. It was a band playing, kind of an R&B band, and I did record them. They sounded great. I was like, and the drummer had great dynamics, so the volume wasn't too loud, but it was just excellent sound, excellent musicianship, great choice of songs that are really not being played too much, and they were getting a good crowd, which is great, and they just sounded great. So, you know, that's a win-win right there. But if people could start creating something new again, because one thing I noticed, even though they're doing these plays and musicals, one of them I think was a take on the movie Elf. That's what the high school kids did, and they were phenomenal. I never seen the movie Elf. Me and Deb said when we go to see that movie Elf, if we rent it or buy it or whatever, or see it on Netflix or whatever, instantly we're gonna think about the performance that the high school kids did, and it was done that good, and we would probably look at each other and say, like what the high school kids did better than the movie. I can't remember. Now that was at Bell Theater. The one that was at Broadway Palms, I can't remember exactly what it was. It was a Christmas type of deal. But it was done very good, nonetheless. And I think they're doing their own spin. But I'm starting to see where people are starting to maybe write their own stage plays and musicals and start to put that out. I think this is a great idea because this is going to get people to want to start to write something new and be creative. And if it's any type of a musical, well, if they're not sampling someone else's music and getting you okay with that, maybe they'll find someone to start writing music for that purpose and see how one thing starts to snowball and grow into another thing, and it starts to just explode into this like big movement where people start to say, hey, this is actually a good idea. So for people who are predicting the doom and gloom with the music scene, I don't think it's going to always go like this. It's natural, and it's more of a downward spiral now because of what we have available to entertain ourselves. But the more someone comes in through the back door and says, hey, let's check this out, it makes people's minds turn around. And a lot of times it'll be through younger kids because that is their first experience. They're kids. They weren't around in the 80s. They haven't seen any of that stuff, right? So this is their thing. And if they get excited by that, if somehow all of us in the guitar community could start to think in terms of how can we associate something with these kids, so as they go through each phase, so you got your elementary school kids, they're interested in one thing, the middle school kids interested in something else, high school kids interested in something else. Have something that could be associable with each class. Then as they get in their adult life, they'll take those ideas and expand it, because as they get older, the good old days is like when they were in school. And then when they become in their 30s, if they had a good scene, a live performance scene in their 20s, then the good old days was when they were in their 20s. But it has to start somewhere. And that's just my, from my observation, where I'm seeing things. So this could be a good thing, a blessing in disguise, that we have in this little bit of a absence, a little bit of a slowdown, because it creates an absence. And there, again, there'll always be people who want to go out, but you can have these moments where, like Dave Simpson said, the crowd of 50 people is the new 100 crowd. Meaning, back in the day, the place would have 100 people, and it was great. Now that same sensation happens to be with a crowd of 50 people. And likewise, with a crowd of 50 people, the new sensation is the crowd of 25 people in the audience. So there's been this dwindling, but again, it just might pick back up. Another thing I've seen, I forget this guy's name. He has a music store in Connecticut, and he was talking about, what was he saying? Who was being bought out? I think Norm's Music in California. I think they're in California, Norm's. I thought they were always in New York, but anyways, they're not being 100% bought out, but they got an investor coming in. And him and someone else mentioned about the used guitar market that's in a Guitar Center. It's just like filled with used guitars, and it's almost implying that the decline of interest in playing guitar and a musical instrument, whether it's keyboards, guitar, what drums. Well, yeah, that could be a result of a music scene kind of dwindling. We're kind of not interested in it, or not enough is on social media, although there is a lot on social media. It just takes something to spark the interest, to like bring it back to life. And who knows, it could be through a lot of these stage plays and musicals. I remember when we were still living back in Illinois. At this point, we're in the Aurora, Naperville area. And one of our friends was going to open up a rehearsal studio / place for lessons, as well as a recording studio. It was all going to be in one building. So you would have an area where there would be lessons, an area where there would be recording, an area with live performances. And his idea, it's a nice idea, a nice thought, but his idea was to see if you could have 7 days a week live performances for a certain amount of hours. I don't know if it's, maybe on the weekends, an afternoon performance, and then an evening performance, and then he was going to have 2 separate stages. I think for the evening performance, a bigger stage, afternoon performance, a smaller stage. Great idea, but he didn't understand, I think, that still people were not as interested, although a lot of people came out to his studio to listen to the speech and see if he gets some investors and that. And Deb and I, we were invited, and they broke us into different groups. So I was in one room with a group of, let's say, about 5 or 6 people, and Deb was in another room with 5 or 6 people, I can't remember, or whatever, and so forth. There might have been 3 different groups we were sectioned off, and giving our inputs. Well, at the time I was teaching at this one music store, or music school, and I also, at that music school, one of the rooms they would rent out for these dances and these performances. Plus, some of my students were also involved in sports, as well as music, but some of them were involved in dance, and they were involved in like musical and stage plays. So one of the concerning questions with our group that got brought up was like, okay, well, hopefully we'll have enough performers where we could do the 7 days a week. And then I thought, well, if not, then you do maybe 4 days a week. Yeah, but we want to keep it going. And it was also, there was a very strong concern that maybe there won't be enough bands that would want to do this, or the music scene's dwindling a little bit. So I had mentioned about, well, where I teach at, I have a lot of students that are involved in these dances and these musical and plays. And it seems that that part of entertainment is doing pretty good. To the point where sometimes the guy at the music that owned the music school had a bigger room. Sometimes he would rent it out for rehearsals and recitals and that. As soon as I mentioned about this, about for younger kids, the one girl and a guy sitting across from me at the table said, "Oh no, we don't want that. We don't want to watch some little kid hack up a dance or a song or something." And I thought, well, you guys don't understand the point here. In order to help bring in revenue, one thing that parents will spend their money on is their kids. And if the kids are going to a dance, they're going to a dance school, learning to dance and musical and stage plays, when they do the performance, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, and aunt and uncle might come out, and their friends might come out. They're going to support the kids. So I put it in a way that they could understand this. So let's say you have a cover band that could barely draw because they could barely draw at the clubs and people are burnt out on it. If you have a seating capacity of, let's say, 100 people, and with the bands, you're only drawing maybe 10 or 12 people, you're not making that much money, right? But if you bring in where the kids are doing a performance, you have a potential of bringing in 50 to 75, maybe 100 people, because they're all, and if it's not just that one kid, think in terms like a dance routine. Let's say you got 10 kids, you got 10 families coming out. And let's say if you just charge $5 a head, you're going to make money. They didn't get it, and they still like, oh, no. But when I was done with that speech, the girl sitting across from me, she leans over and she says, "Yeah, well, I think she's got a niece that does all." She goes, "Yeah, and they do pretty good." I said, "You see?" I said, "So when you're going to spend all this money and you're not going to be able to bring the money in, here's another idea." So likewise, what's going on now, this is another idea. You get these kids, somehow you get them involved. And when they're young like that, they're excited. Then you can start to develop a scene. Because not everyone's going to stick with it, we know. But you can get those that are. They'll stick with it if they see excitement and they see a reason to stick with it. Then they're going to stick with it. I have one of my students arriving, Aiden. He just got a guitar for Christmas. And, hopefully he'll get through the phase of building up the calluses. It's nothing you're going to start is always easy. Always remember that. So be patient and take your time. But once you start to see yourself excelling at something like, hey, I could do that now, it opens up doors. And then next thing you know, you're on the road to want to practice more and rehearse more and develop your technique and develop your style, and it snowballs. So I hope this makes sense for some people out there who think that it's always going to be doom and gloom. You're likewise, everyone goes through every economy goes through a recession. It's like a reset button. I guess you could call this a musical recession. It's just hitting a reset button, but then taking a good look at the other opportunities that one door closes, another door opens, and then you continue to keep the ball rolling. So I just wanted to bring that up because of the message I got on my Instagram about Dursol's music, and then a video I saw about the music stores are everything's kind of like this. It's good to do that. And then at the end of the month, or actually I think today is the first day at NAMM show 2026. We'll see what they're gonna pop up new for the musical instruments, what we're gonna have new in that. I think what happens is people, everyone has a burnout. When you have a burnout, you take a little rest. It doesn't mean you quit playing or anything. You just take a little rest, and then you revive yourself, and then you get the inspiration. You go out and do it again. It can be very discouraging when you see the live music scene dwindle, you know, a little bit. I always say always have that backup system. Because with a backup system, bringing in that money in, you don't have to hit the panic button. Um, One of the jazz guitarists, Jimmy Bruno, said he was going to retire from performing. He was still going to play, and I guess up in New York, a place called Birdland, where they would do Wednesday night guitar night. It's all jazz music, and you know Jimmy's like what 71 years old, and the guy that hosts it, Frank Vignolio, he says, yeah, it gets kind of tough, as we get older. It's not that easy to go through performances. What people do not understand is they see the performance. Let's say it's a 1 to 3 hour performance. You're seeing that, and it's glorifying, it's great and everything, and it's exciting. But they don't see on the backside all the rehearsals and it takes. And as we get older, sometimes we slow down. So there's that's also happening as far as some of the music scene kind of dwindle a little bit. A lot of people getting older, they can't go out and constantly play anymore like they used to. So that gives a doorway for the next generation coming up, and keeping the ball rolling. I guess it's all how you relate to people. Because if you could be relative to young folks as well as old folks, then you're kind of like, I don't like using this term, but for lack of better words, you're like a middleman, but you're the middleman that is keeping the music going. You're keeping the train going, and then as we get older, we take time off and things of that nature. It does feel good to have a day off, I'll tell you that, But it helps with the next generation, excuse me, to keep everything going. And it doesn't mean everything's going to die and wither away, It means that there's just changes. Now, I want to, before I close out tonight, I want to also make a mention here. A lot of times I could do the rock and the metal, so I haven't done that really in a while because of the style of music I play, because of the places I'm playing at, But one thing I do like with the style of music I'm playing is like jazz fusion, kind of a smoothie jazz, It gives me the freedom to improvise and to have elements of subtlety in my playing as well as moments of excitement. It's like having the best of both worlds. Plus, when I was younger, after I graduated high school, and even when I was still in high school, I was getting into the instrumental guitar fusion thing. And my first record I had was Jeff Beck's Wired, followed by Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow. And then I graduated high school, and I had George Benson, Breezin' album and that. And then I got into Al Di Meola, and that just blew my mind, man. Someone could play that fast and clean, but that melodic, musical. And bands like Return to Forever with keyboardist Chick Corea, and Jean Lupante, who was a French violinist, electric violinist that played fusion and Weather Report. And all this music, it took elements of jazz, some elements of blues, and then mixed it with rock, and I thought it was great. It's like the best of all these worlds. So that's why I gravitate to that. But what I was saying is that when I graduated high school, my guitar buddies, we would jam this kind of music. We have these long jam sessions and take turns soloing, come up with melodies and that. So it kind of gives me, like I'm giving a homage to my guitar buddies way back in 1981 through 1987. And I miss those. I miss those days of just the jam sessions we used to have. So it's kind of like keeping that going and giving them honor and respect, because they had a huge influence on me. Huge influence on me. And what's really interesting, this music I'm playing is groove oriented, where it appeals to an older crowd that likes jazz music, but it appeals to a younger crowd that likes house music and hip hop and all that. And because that style of music, hip hop and house and all, is borrowed from jazz. It has elements of it. And the area I grew up in Chicago, by Wrigley Field, I was surrounded by all the blues and these jazz clubs. So this is the stuff I would hear. And funk and all that. It would hear all this stuff. And then out in the suburbs, we had all the metal clubs, and I still love to play heavy metal. So I had all these elements, and it was just like it stayed with me as I got older. So hopefully the stuff I do, it seems it also appeals to this younger crowd. And when I say younger crowd, they're like college age kids, and they're getting into it, and they don't care if I'm not singing, and that's the beauty of it, because they're hearing through what I could do through the instrument. They're hearing the melodies, and hopefully even the younger crowd, like Aiden, he watches, and Rory, which is you're a good kid. You're a good young man. You really are. And hopefully it inspires them. They're always like rock and metal, and I'll come out and do some stuff on our channel. A little bit later here, where I'm going to bust out the BC Ridge and my other guitar and just rock out, play some metal for you guys. Because I do miss it. I love it. It's energized music. But hopefully, this other style of music could also inspire them to, say, hey, I kind of like that as well. I do know when these kids have these dances, and I've said this on my other routes, on some of the songs and the music, and I'd mentioned bands, and they would say, oh yeah, Earth, Wind and Fire, my mom and dad, that's my grandma and grandpa would say, that's kind of cool stuff, or Michael Jackson, that's kind of cool, and it's very much relatable. So when you bring the guitar into it, when they see and hear that you could bring the guitar to it, still rock out, but you're still playing this style of music that they're liking, then what happens is it's like you're this bridge to all these different styles. And then they start to accept it, like, hey, that does sound kind of cool. I like that. Maybe not all the time, but I like that as well as I like this. And really, I think that's all it takes. It's the interest. And once there's an interest there, then people start to go out. Maybe not as much as it used to be back in the 80s. Because, again, it's a different time. Back in the 80s, there was no YouTube. There was no social media. The VCR decks came out. First it was the beta tapes, and then it went to the larger VCR tapes. And if you wanted to watch a concert, you had to rent it at Blockbuster or a local store, or go out and buy the tape. And back then they were very expensive. Or we would just go out and check out the concerts. So because of the lack of what was available to watch at home, you had to go out. And it gave us the incentive. It was exciting. So I think if we create something that's exciting for these kids to go out and see something, it'll start that ball rolling again. And I think that it'll pick up again. I guess you could give me one of your thoughts on all that. Yeah. Again, I feel so bad, my friends. Yeah, it's so hard for me to see it. I really wish YouTube would consider, would listen to a lot of us, say, hey man, could you have it where the live chat stays after the video closes, and when you rewatch the video stream, you can see the live chat, and then like zoom in, because I just feel so bad. I don't want anybody feeling I'm ignoring you, because I'm not. I can't see. I can't. It's so tiny. And I really appreciate everyone that logs on and watches the live streams and that, because it's your time. You could be watching something else, right? And to be honest, when people can't log in, I don't take that personal. We leave the live streams up, and if it's something not for you, that you're entitled to your opinion. You can still be my friend. Sometimes I do things. I look at the replay. I'm like, oh wow, that sounded bad, But that's how I learn. I don't do that again, right? So, okay, my friends. I hope this has been helpful, and we should be back on track Monday. We got another weekend off, which thank God, because I'm in the writing process. And it gives me a time to write new material and go over new material. I do have a gig coming up in February that the guy wants me to play bossa nova style, as well as what I play, in which I can do all that. So I'm gonna also uh, in the this weekend the weekend coming up, work on recording some stuff. I already do have a couple pieces that's in that style, but I'm gonna do some more. And I think it's only a 2-hour performance, so it won't take long. I don't know if we could stream it live or not because it's a private performance, so we'll find out. But anyways, guys, I hope you have a great evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you all. You guys are absolutely the best. And again, if you want to ask a question that I didn't see on the live chat, at the end of the live stream, when you watch it again, or just put it in the comments, and then I'll log on and I'll check it out and I'll answer whatever question you guys have. All right, my friends, until next time, you stay strong, safe, and true. Rock on, and God bless. Take care, guys. We love you all.